Have you ever wished for a second chance? Not to erase the past, but to rise from it? This is the story of a woman who lost everything that once gave her life meaning, and how, from the ruins of regret, she built something stronger. It's not a tale of perfection or miracles. It's about the quiet, unglamorous courage it takes to begin again when no one believes in you, not even yourself. Because sometimes, the most powerful chapter of your life begins right after you think the story is over. The morning her world collapsed, the sun still rose, almost cruelly bright, as if mocking the darkness that had settled inside her. Maya sat in her car outside the office for the last time, hands trembling on the steering wheel. A cardboard box rested in the passenger seat, her life reduced to a few framed photos, a half-used notebook, and the company ID she'd once worn with pride. She had built her career from nothing. Long nights, skipped birthdays, endless sacrifices, and one mistake, one impulsive decision, had undone it all. The whispers in the hallway, the email that spread faster than truth ever could, the final meeting that ended with cold eyes and a printed termination letter. The headlines came next. Her name, once respected, now tangled in words like fraud, failure, disgrace. Friends stopped answering calls. Even her mother's voice on the phone was tight, afraid, as if shame were contagious. Now, the silence in her apartment was unbearable. The plants she'd once cared for had withered, untouched for weeks. Unopened mail piled by the door. Nights were the worst, when memories replayed like punishment, when she wondered if redemption was a myth people told themselves to survive. But beneath all that noise, guilt, loss, exhaustion, something else flickered. The faintest, almost imperceptible ache to try again. Not to reclaim the past, but to feel alive again. For now, though, Maya just sat in the car, staring at the reflection of a woman she no longer recognized. The engine was off, the world was quiet, and in that stillness, her story, her second chapter, waited for her to begin. The days that followed blurred together. Long stretches of silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional knock of rain against her window. Maya had stopped counting how many mornings she'd woken up promising herself she'd do something. Go outside, apply for a job, call someone, and how many nights she'd gone to bed without doing any of it. Her phone buzzed sometimes, usually with bank alerts or spam messages. But one afternoon, a new email appeared. Community Renewal Program, volunteer call. It wasn't addressed to her specifically. It was part of a mailing list she'd forgotten to unsubscribe from. Still, she opened it. They were looking for volunteers to help clean up a public park, the same park she used to jog through before everything went wrong. She almost deleted it. Then she saw the date. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Her finger hovered over the screen, and for a reason she couldn't explain, maybe defiance, maybe desperation, she marked it on her calendar. The next morning, Maya stood by the edge of the park, awkward in an old hoodie and borrowed gloves. The ground smelled of damp earth and new beginnings. A handful of strangers were already at work, collecting trash, painting fences, laughing like they'd never known failure. She felt out of place, exposed, but an elderly man with a kind face noticed her hesitation. "First time?" he asked, handing her a garbage bag. She nodded. "Good," he said. First times are where all the best stories begin. For the next few hours, Maya worked quietly, scraping off graffiti, planting small flowers along the path. Her back ached, her hands blistered, but for the first time in months, her mind was still. No headlines, no regrets, just rhythm, dig, plant, breathe. At noon, the man joined her again, wiping his brow. "You know," he said, "I used to come here after I lost my job. My wife passed the same year. Thought my life was over. Then I started showing up. One morning became two. Two became years. Sometimes you don't need a plan, just a place to start." Maya looked at the seedlings they'd planted, tiny green stems trembling in the wind. She wanted to tell him everything. How she'd ruined her reputation, how her name had become a warning. But instead, she just said, "It feels good to do something that grows." He smiled. "That's all it takes. Growth doesn't ask for perfection, just consistency." When she went home that afternoon, dirt under her nails and sweat streaking her face, she caught her reflection in the mirror again. For the first time, it didn't make her flinch. The pain was still there, but now, beside it, a flicker. Small, steady, alive. The park became her refuge. What started as a one-time visit turned into a ritual. Every Saturday, Maya returned, gloves in hand, ready to work. She didn't tell anyone. It wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about doing. There was something grounding about it. The sound of shovels, the chatter of strangers who didn't ask about her past, the smell of wet soil. Slowly, those strangers became familiar faces. She learned their names. Ruth, who baked muffins for everyone. Amir, a college student trying to make up for lost time. And Thomas, the old man who'd handed her that first garbage bag, who somehow always seemed to know when she needed a quiet word of encouragement. Weeks passed, and with every visit, Maya felt the weight inside her shift. She still woke up some mornings with dread pressing on her chest, but the difference now was, she got up anyway. Thomas once told her, healing doesn't announce itself, it just sneaks in when you're busy trying. And that's exactly what was happening. One evening, Ruth mentioned a local nonprofit looking for part-time help managing community events. Maya hesitated. She hadn't touched anything professional since her downfall. But that night, she opened her laptop for the first time in months. Her resume looked foreign, like it belonged to another lifetime. She deleted half of it, rewrote the rest, and sent it off with trembling fingers. A week later, she got the call. When she walked into the small, sunlit office for her interview, she expected judgment. Instead, the woman interviewing her smiled and said, "Everyone here has a story. We care more about where you're going than where you've been." That sentence stayed with her. By the time she left that building, her steps were lighter, not confident yet, but determined. Maya still didn't know what her future looked like. But as she passed the park on her way home, she noticed the flowers she'd planted weeks ago now in full bloom. For the first time in a long time, she smiled without forcing it. The climb had begun, and this time, she wasn't afraid of falling. For a while, everything moved upward. Maya had started working part-time at the nonprofit, organizing events, coordinating volunteers, rediscovering a rhythm she thought she'd lost forever. The laughter, the purpose, the routine, all of it began to patch the torn edges of her life. But healing rarely comes without reminders. One rainy afternoon, as she set up chairs for a community meeting, she overheard two volunteers whispering by the door, "Isn't that the woman who got fired for?" The rest was lost in a hush, followed by the unmistakable glance of recognition. Maya froze. The words hit harder than she expected. She'd worked so hard to escape that version of herself, yet here it was, chasing her shadow. She wanted to walk out, disappear, start over again somewhere no one knew her name. But Thomas's voice echoed in her mind. Healing doesn't announce itself. It just sneaks in when you're busy trying. So she stayed. Later that evening, while cleaning up, she found herself alone with one of the women from earlier, a young volunteer named Lila. She avoided Maya's gaze at first, then finally said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. It just surprised me. You don't seem like that kind of person." Maya took a deep breath. "I was that person," she said softly. "And maybe a part of me always will be. But I'm trying to become someone else, one choice at a time." There was a long silence. Then Lila nodded. "You already are." That night, Maya walked home through the rain. Her shoes were soaked, her hair plastered to her face, but her heart was steady. She realized that rebuilding wasn't about erasing the past. It was about standing tall in front of it, unflinching, and saying, "You don't define me anymore." It wasn't an easy lesson, but it was the one that mattered most. By the time she reached her apartment, the rain had stopped. The city smelled clean again, washed, renewed. So was she. Spring came quietly that year. Gentle rain, softer mornings, and a strange, unfamiliar calm inside Maya. For months, her life had been about surviving, showing up, pushing through. But now, something had shifted. She wasn't just rebuilding anymore. She was becoming. Her job at the nonprofit had grown into a full-time position. She'd started leading small workshops for people trying to restart their own lives. Ex-offenders, recovering addicts, single parents, anyone who needed a safe place to start again. At first, she doubted herself. What right did she have to guide anyone? But every time she spoke honestly about her own failures, about the loneliness, the guilt, the fear, people listened. They didn't see her as broken. They saw her as proof that healing was possible. One evening, after a long session, she found Thomas waiting outside the office. His hair was whiter now, his smile the same calm light it had always been. "Heard you're changing lives," he said with a grin. She laughed. "Just trying to pay forward what you gave me." He shook his head. "You did the work, Maya. I just handed you a garbage bag." They walked together to the park, the same one where it all began. The flowers she'd planted months ago had multiplied, spreading color across the paths. Children played nearby, couples walked hand in hand. It was alive in a way it hadn't been before. Maya crouched near the flower beds, touching one of the stems. "I used to think I'd ruined my life," she said. "But maybe I just hadn't finished it yet." Thomas smiled. "That's the secret no one tells you. Redemption isn't about starting over. It's about continuing differently." As the evening light settled over the park, Maya felt a deep stillness, the kind that comes when the noise inside finally quiets. She wasn't chasing forgiveness anymore. She was living it. The woman who once hid in shame now stood where others could find her, not as a symbol of perfection, but of persistence. And in that, she'd finally found peace. A year later, the city felt different, or maybe it was Maya who had changed. She walked down the familiar streets toward the community center, the morning sun brushing her face in gold. Her steps were unhurried now, her gaze steady. There was no rush to prove herself anymore, just a quiet sense of belonging in a world she'd once believed had no room left for her. Inside, the center buzzed with life. Volunteers gathered supplies, laughter filled the halls, and in one of the smaller rooms, a new program was about to begin. Rebuild, a workshop for starting over. Maya set a notebook on the podium. Her own handwriting filled the first page. Notes, reminders, lessons written not from theory, but from experience. As people began to take their seats, she looked around the room. There were faces that mirrored her old pain, shame, hesitation, exhaustion, but also the same flickers she once felt. The fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, life wasn't over yet. She took a deep breath and began, her voice steady but soft. "I used to think failure was the end of everything. I thought if I fell far enough, I'd never climb back. But what I learned is that the fall isn't the full story. It's just the first chapter of becoming who you're meant to be." The room was silent. People listened, not out of politeness, but recognition. She spoke of truth, of rebuilding, of forgiving yourself before asking the world to. Every sentence was a piece of her past turned into a stepping stone for someone else. After the session, a young woman approached her, eyes red, voice trembling. "I don't know if I can do it," she said. "I've made too many mistakes." Maya smiled, the same calm warmth Thomas once showed her. "Then you're already halfway there. Admitting it means you're ready to begin." Later that day, she walked to the park again, her sanctuary, her reminder. The flowers were in full bloom, taller, stronger, wild with color. A small plaque had been placed near the path. "Renewal Garden, dedicated to second chances." She knelt beside it, brushing her fingers over the engraved words. For a long moment, she just breathed, the soft wind, the distant laughter, the rustle of leaves, all of it whispering that she had made it. Not back to who she was, but forward into who she was always meant to become. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in amber and rose, Maya stood. She opened her notebook, a fresh page waiting, and wrote the first words of her new chapter. Mistakes don't end stories. They begin better ones. She smiled, closed the book gently, and walked toward the light, no longer haunted by her past, but guided by it. Her second chapter had begun. Some stories don't end where we think they do. They just pause, waiting for courage to return. If Maya's journey reminded you that hope still exists, share this story. Someone out there needs to be reminded. It's never too late to begin again.